Special Branch and MI6 officer and the author of Black Ops.
I was undercover for Special Branch in a jihadi organisation.
If you'd like to help Carlton keep producing the Black Spy podcast and receive episodes and information that's only available to Carlton's special Patreon agents, then you can donate as little as £3, €4 or $5 a month by signing up with Patreon. See the Black Spy podcast notes or Google Patreon Black Spy podcast and pledge your monthly amount. You can even win the opportunity to be a guest on the show. Thanks for listening. And don't forget to subscribe for free.
My name is Carlton King, and welcome to the Black Spy Podcast, the show which lifts the light, or should I say sheds the light, on the world of secret intelligence, national security, and armed governmental personal protection operations, and connects them geopolitically with the world in which we live in. Now, what I do like to do is bring on guests on the show who have a very interesting life and life experience into parts of the world that most listeners won't have experienced. And sometimes make the connection between that and the secret world, and other times just the geopolitics of the world. Well, some time back in the second season, episode 4 to be precise, we had Jill on. And I've had quite a few listeners come back to me saying it was fantastic. For the first time, they really had an understanding of the world of street drugs and how that affected the normal people, and indeed how it affected them. So what I wanted to do, and I said I would at the time, and now I've finally got her, I brought Jill back on the show. So Jill, nice to have you back.
Hi, I just can't believe that it actually got the reaction it did.
It did, and it's great because what we want is we want that reaction because we want to learn as well as kind of educate and entertain, I guess, at the same time. So you were able to do both, and I think it's very, very important that we sort of hit back at that. So I don't want to waste any time because last time we were so much into it that we ran for quite a long time and I had to stop you full floor. I don't want to do that this time. I want to get you straight in. So basically one of the primary questions that I got was, I've got a person, this is how it came across, I've got a person in my family or friendship area who somehow is connected with drugs. And basically reading between the lines, it was often is an actual addict. What can I do to help them?
You have to accept it is the first thing, and that's something that can be very traumatic if it's a child, especially if you're a daughter or son, or who wants to admit they've got a drug addict in the family. And then it's laying your boundaries, very clear boundaries from the beginning about what is acceptable and what is not. Because what happens is people tend to want to go into help mode. They're going to cure this, they're going to fix it, they're going to fix this problem and everything's going to be okay. There's only one person that can fix it, and that's the one that's addicted. And until they admit it, they will continue to be a curse on your life because the addiction becomes their priority even over themselves, never mind the family.
So, the question's posed. I've got somebody in the family, I've got a friend, I've got a whatever. I realise they are drug addicted. What can I do? You're saying accept that they are drug addicted, but it's stronger than that, isn't it? It's people stealing money, people lending money. So I guess it starts off with lending.
That's what I mean. When you have to accept it. You're not going to fix it, so you need to accept it from the beginning. It's there. it's not going to change. It's just going to absolutely destroy their life and your life if you become entrenched in it. And what happens is, as parents, we naturally want to fix things for our children, so we'll do what we think is going to work. But a lot of the times that will be giving the addict money, or the addict will break in and steal things. When you try to talk to an addict about their addiction, the first thing they'll do is they'll shout and scream at you, saying it's all in your head. Oh, no, I'm not. No, I'm not. They will always try to turn around the conversation so you become the villain and they're not the villain.
Can you be a little bit more concrete for me? Can you? I don't want to pry, but could you give me examples as to that actually occurring?
So, you know, when somebody first learns, a lot of the time somebody will first learn that they've got a member of a family that's got an addiction, because things will go missing in the house. And it'll be simple things at first, and the sort of things that you think, oh, have I put that away, or someone borrowed that? But then the ante will get bigger, so there'll be jewellery, money, things like that will go missing or be stolen. And when you challenge the addict or the person that has this addiction, they will swear black is white that it's not them, there's nothing wrong with them, it's all in your head, and they will scream and they'll shout. They'll make you feel guilty for asking that question, so you then back off. Once they know that they've hit the trigger point, and your trigger is, you're accusing me of this, and this is, I haven't done anything, and why are you saying this, who's been, and over the shit. Once they know they can do that, and you will react to that in the way they want to, they will continuously do that. They will just start a row for no reason whatsoever.
So, how long does it take to get to this stage? I know I'm kind of how long's a piece of string type of thing, but surely it's not the first time they go out and take drugs that they end up like that.
But obviously, it depends on age as well. It depends on age, it depends on people's financial circumstances. So it could be peer pressure from school. So it's children, so they might sell their phone, and they might sell their laptop, or usually it's PlayStation games, stuff like that, you know, that you probably, they've lent it to their mate and things like that. So that they will trigger your thought pattern more quickly than an adult would. Usually with an adult, you know, they've probably borrowed money off you in the past, and they've always paid it back a couple of days later, or when they've got paid. So you don't think anything of it. So when they ask you to borrow money, you just say, oh yeah, no problem. So you just give them the money. But then you realise after a couple of months that they're never paying it back.
Right.
So then you ask for it back, and then they will instigate an argument then, so they don't have to confront that they haven't paid you the money back because they've spent it on drugs.
Right.
So they will turn every discussion around so that it's your fault. What are you asking me that for? It's your fault. You shouldn't be asking me that. Who do you think I am? You think I'm some drunk, dirty smackhead? They will do everything to trigger every guilt neuron in your head.
Yeah. So as a drug worker, when you started in this profession, is that something that they taught you would be the case, or is that something that you basically pick up like on the job training?
It's a bit of both. I always remember an old drugs worker saying to me, do you know when an addict's telling you a lie? And I said, right, so the mouth's moving.
So you could argue that person was a little bit jaded, that old worker.
It was. They'd been in it a long time. I learned a lot from them. But it's like every job. You go in with aspirations, and you go in with expectations, and everything's great. Mm-hmm. And as you do the job and you go through it, and your life changes on a personal level, it becomes a bit jaded, and it becomes a lot. The clarity is easier to get to a lot quicker.
Right, so what you're basically saying is that they were correct.
Yeah, definitely. It's An addict is one of the biggest manipulators. They can manipulate any situation if allowed. And that's why I said in the beginning, you've got to be very strong with your boundaries. They're not allowed in the house. You're not doing this. Don't come near the house. If you've had drugs, I don't want to meet you in my house. I don't want you near my kids. And that sounds very harsh, but sometimes it's these harsh realities to an adult addict. Because the thing is, by the time they realise it, they've gone to they've gone beyond their own being. They're now in the drug being. Because to become a human being, then become a drugs being. Because the drug is all consuming. That is what controls your life. You don't even want to eat. You don't care.
What you're telling me though, Jill, then, frankly, is that there is no help, really.
No. I don't
What
think
you're
there is.
basically saying to me is, what is the point of a drug worker? Because you can't help them.
No. We worked it out, I think. It was to see a client for 10 to 15 minutes would equate to 45 minutes worth of paperwork that I had to fill in to justify what I was doing so that I would get paid.
Right.
But I was doing that for years and years, and it still hasn't changed.
Let's put it a different way, because otherwise we're going to start the show with the perspective that says it's pointless. That's where we're going to
At
start.
the minute, it is pointless because it isn't any different. They've done the same thing for the past 30 or 40 years, and it's not changed. We're still into, heroin and cocaine, they've been around hundreds of years. This is nothing new. There's derivatives, but the two basic fundamental ingredients have been around for years. So they've tried everything, they've done everything, what they say they do, but what's changed? It's still the same.
So, last time you were on, we basically spoke about some people who could, if not control it, live with it. And it might have been because they were wealthy. You said, I remember you saying that there were two types of people, really. Those who just like taking drugs, full stop.
Yeah.
And those who basically fell into it for whatever reason and became addicted. And then there's degrees of addiction, basically, as I understood you. But the problem I have now was that people then contact me and say, we've got the addiction element, how do we now help the person? You seem to be saying right now on the show, I can't help you.
No.
You seem to be saying...
I'm just keeping them alive.
You seem to be saying to the mothers, fathers, grandmothers, grandfathers, brothers, sisters of addicts, this person is now an addict, and you haven't put a time frame on it, so that will be interesting for you to get the time frame, an idea, because everybody's different, of course, but the time frame would be interesting. You seem to be saying to me is that it's done, don't give them any money, get rid of them, you can't help them. I mean, am I getting this right?
Yes. Yeah. Because there's nothing that as a member of the family you can do, because it's too emotional. You're too emotionally invested. Because you want to fix your child, you want to fix your sibling, you want to, whoever it is, you're too emotionally invested. So you can't think rationally about it.
Okay.
And you just want to, and then, but as well, you want to live in the histrionics of it. You want to live before they had the addiction. So you make everything nice for them. You cook their favourite tea. You buy their favourite pop, whatever it is. You know, to make so they feel at home, so they feel better. And I can guarantee they're sitting in the chair thinking about where they're going to score or where their next clean pin's going to come from. So you go to all this effort and you make the effort on their birthday and you throw a birthday party and they don't turn up till the following week because they've been on a absolute bender. You have to, because there's only one person that can fix an addict, and that's the addict. And until they are prepared to do that, they will use and abuse you, and then that causes massive resentment. It causes fractures in families.
But how do you know that they are at the level where they do want to change? I mean,
because you know your children, you know your sibling, and it's being honest. And that's the problem. When you are emotionally attached, you can't see what's going on directly in front of you because you simply don't want to. And I get that.
So you can see it, but you don't want to see it. Is what
Yeah,
you're
of course.
saying.
Who wants to admit that their son or daughter is behind the bins jacking up? Who wants to admit that? Or their son or daughter is selling themselves for a tenner so they could go and score? As your child, you can't, no matter how old your kids are, you will always cradle them, whether it be in your arms or your head, but you will always do that. So you will always try to make it better. But sometimes you just have to realise that you can't.
So let's keep it concrete, because they were concrete questions. So concretely, what you are saying is hand that person over to a professional.
Yes.
You leave them. It's this American sort of tough love they used to have years back. You leave them, you don't let them in the house, you don't let them do, you don't open the routes to the theft and whatever else is going on. Right, so why am I looking into this subject at all? Well, I'm looking into the subject because, of course, there was the war on drugs started in the United States. We were going to defeat drugs. Because of the fear of what others would do with drugs to undermine the United States. That's the original bit, and then it came on further with other countries because obviously the US does it, so all other countries are then they've got to be controlled because the drugs might come in from other countries, etc., etc. So that's the way it works. So what we have from my sphere of area is we have, tens of thousands of people, hundreds of thousands, even millions of people dying to prevent the war on drugs. Coming into the US and then around in all other agencies take part of it from around the rest of the world. So that's why we looked at it originally, but that was too wide for me. I wanted to narrow it down to what is happening to the normal person in the street, something that I've never really dealt with, because I was dealing at that top level of narco-terrorism, of MK Ultra. I don't know if you know about MK Ultra. MK Ultra was something that way back in the early 1940s, 48, 49, they were OSS then, before the CIA began. It was called the OSS Agency, Office of Strategic. Oh, I've forgotten the other bit, the other S. Anyway, it's basically the wartime CIA, which then became CIA subsequently. They were looking at what could hurt the US, and they had heard that LSD was created. So they went out wanting to buy up LSD in the world so it couldn't affect the United States, because he'd heard that this thing can change your mind and make you into some sort of zombie who would do things that when you woke up the next day you didn't know what it was. You can think, knowing how the CIA functions and works, you can see the other route to that was we can get that and make sure the Soviets end up with LSD and that they're people, we can control them. So you can see both sides of that coin. That's how it works in the agencies. So what happened is they bought up the LSD was made in Switzerland at the time, sent 2 agents out, officers out, because they were OSS, so they were agents, but in CIA it's officers. Sent them out, they bought up the stuff, brought it back, and started doing a lot of experiments on people. Now, people didn't know that experiments were being done. This has been done by the US government, and it ran through the CIA for about 20 years. They were experimenting on people. They had a thing called Midnight Blue. And Midnight Blue was an experiment where they got normal people with prostitutes who would meet a person, normal. The prostitutes knew they were giving them something. They didn't know what it was to their johns. They just wanted normal, everyday, preferably also a little bit wealthy people, because they wanted to see if you could turn wealthy people's minds. If it was just normal Joe Soap, they'd do that anyway, because they were doing it with prisoners, they were doing it with people in the military. That was easy for them to control. But they wanted to do it with the normal fellow who might be a little bit higher, but seeing a prostitute who's got a weakness. And they wanted to find out what they would tell the prostitutes if they dosed them with LSD. Now, these people never knew they were being dosed with LSD. So they give them LSD. It's all factual. Because it came out in 1975 to 1978. They had a Senate commission into it. They wanted to find out, what they wanted to try and do was to create a Manchurian Candidate. Have you ever seen that movie? It's a good movie, actually. Back in the 70s with Frank Sinatra. They thought that the communists were doing it and they wanted to do it, which was to be able to get a person to kill someone wake up the next day and not know he did it. Right? So they could mind control. That's what they're trying to work on. So they were doing this with normal jobs, and one thing went wrong, which is why they had the commission into it, is that one fella jumped out the window after he did it. 10 stories up or whatever it was, killed himself. Another fella, an army captain who they gave it to surreptitiously, just give it to him, captain in the army, so he's not Joe Salt, yeah, he went out, bumped himself off. So it's happened quite a lot with these sort of things they were doing with people with LSD. The problem was the LSD which they'd bought up, and they were giving it to universities to check on people and do experiments and all this sort of stuff. It got out in the universities and created a counterculture that they were trying to prevent. In other words, trying to make people controlled actually did the opposite. People were not controllable, which is why you had the hippie movements and all the rest of the stuff. And then the drug element came from there. The next bit of this, MK Ultra, which is another aspect, was in later years, they were doing exactly the same. Oliver North, remember him? The colonel who stood up in the Iran Contra, right? So they were buying then cocaine now, so this is the other stimulant, bringing it into the United States. And you saw a movie which Tom Cruise played in where he played the pilot. I forgot the name of the pilot off the top of my head, but it's all factual, so you can look it all up. Bringing the stuff into the United States on aircraft.
We can't remember.
Massive amounts of cocaine. And then selling it in the black community to narcotise blacks, okay, particularly in Compton and places like that. They then learned, some of the black people learned how to make crack from it. And they were happy with crack because it then became cheaper for them to do it and it narcotised more people. It was destroying the communities. Great, because if you're destroying the community and you're all narcotised, you're not fighting the system, right?
Yeah.
So that was how that worked then with the CIA, and then they got the money to buy arms to give to the Contras to fight what they thought was communist. So it all fed itself. Right, so this is what states do. So that's what, my thing was to look at that angle. But I thought that's too impersonal. And this is why I wanted you back, Jill, and this is why I had you on in the first place. I wanted to see the personal aspect of this. This thing that now becomes uncontrollable and is now out in society, how it basically controls people. And then I get this sort of people saying, how can we stop this control? You're saying to me, this is why I bring in the whole CIA story, they realised they couldn't control it.
No, you can't.
And you're saying to me, you cannot control your daughter, your son, your whatever. You can't control them.
No, because the addiction is bigger than you now. You are not the priority in their life.
So my question is, you seem to be putting a very bad angle there that says it's all downhill.
No, I never said that. I never said that. What I said was, you, as a parent, you are too emotionally involved to try to tackle something that is so emotive to you. Because a lot of the times, the things that you do are to make yourself feel better. The addict doesn't care.
So what are the successes then, Jill? What are the actual... In your time as a drug advisor, name me the successes.
Well, a success to me, even if someone's in addiction, is they're still alive.
Right, let's come off that, okay? Because they're still stealing from their parents.
They're still stealing from their parents, and
you tell me of a success. The successes. You're 20 years in the game. Give me the number of successes who've come off it and are living a normal life.
You want the truth?
Yes, absolute truth.
Less than 10.
So you're telling me less than 10 people. How many would you have dealt with?
Hundreds.
Literally hundreds, that's what you're saying? Seriously?
Yeah.
What? Low hundreds, 200, 300?
Oh, no, up.
What, 5, 8?
Even more. I mean, I would... Yeah.
And out of that, you're telling me you only know of 10 people who've come off it and are living a normal, everyday, respectable life?
Yeah. Yeah.
So what's happened to the others?
The issues are never dealt with. The core issue is never dealt with. And until until the decision, they're in the second stage, so that you make the decision. I like taking drugs. I'm just going to take them. I'm taking drugs for a reason, whether that be self-medicating for mental health issues, whether that be trauma issues, that just to get you through the day, whether it be stimulants, as we said before, our politician's example, doctors, surgeons, policemen, stimulants, that's theirs. To taking heroin because they just can't live with their life. They can't live with what's going on in their head. They can't deal with the issues. A lot of people they were sexually abused, physically abused, mentally abused, but it's never been dealt with. That part of their life has never been laid to rest. And until that happens, until they find peace in their soul, it will never happen. But they will always return. It's like you can get somebody, you can get even what they call a payday addict, where somebody won't use all week, they'll just take, but they're still on methadone or they're still on Subutex, they're still taking an alternative form of drug. But would you class someone being on methadone as being clean?
Well, no, and you explained in the last one you did for us, you explained what methadone and Subutex was. Just very quickly, just in case people didn't listen to the last one, which they should go back and listen to it. But if they didn't, I'll just explain. You said methadone was basically a replacement for a sticky replacement that they just took, rather than having to take the heroin itself. So it was at least clean because people knew what it was, and the government are paying for it.
And it's actually worse to come off there than heroin. But
it's worse to come off. The Subutex, you said, makes people sick, but the vast majority of folk don't want to take it because it isn't nice.
Yeah.
So the ones you really felt wanted to come off were the ones who took the Subutex.
Yes, I felt they were. I think that they're the ones that have really made a decision and they are prepared to do this now.
Right. So that's where you were. That's what you saw in your life. That's what you were dealing with. Mm-hmm. We now discover that from all of your work over decades, you can tell me of 10 people who you've said have gone to a normal everyday life.
Yeah.
So what I'm saying is we have at least, in the area where you used to live, walking around at least 20 years older, and still in some way, shape or means involved in the drug game in terms of being addicts.
Yes.
So, trying to get my head around it, can we say that some of these people who are addicts are living a normal life because they can afford to pay for it?
No, because if they could be on methadone, so you've got to remember the government will still see somebody on a script as clean, but they're not.
Right, so every day they're taking their methadone.
So they're taking their methadone, and occasionally what they'll do is they'll have a payday bunk up, so they'll have a bag of heroin when they get paid their benefit.
Right.
So that might be once a week.
So they're still addicted, but that's the treat. But they can live a life.
Yeah, but to me, if you're asking me, it's clean of substance. So methadone is still an addictive substance.
So if it wasn't for the methadone, these people who you do not class as not being addicted because they're taking it, these people would be taking the heroin. That's basically what you're saying.
Yeah.
So the methadone's filling the heroin bit.
Yeah.
But they can live a more normal life? Is that...
relatively normal, yeah.
Am I...
Yeah,
right,
relatively normal.
Right. So there is some hope then.
Yeah, there is some hope, but again, it's back to the addict. The addict needs to want to become clean. They have to put the work in. And it's not just a case of, you keep making reference to, it's not a case of just the drug. It's the whole world that becomes around them and they become entrenched in. Mm-hmm. This chaos and this drama and everything else that comes with it.
And they enjoy the drama.
And the bouncing off the walls and you name it. And then you say to them, okay then, so you can't take that substance anymore that's got you through. Your mental health's going to plummet. You're going to literally age overnight because I don't know if you've ever heard the old saying that an addict will always freeze on the day he started.
Okay.
You ever heard that saying?
I've never heard it, no.
Right. But here's a new front door key. We know you can't live really because you don't know how to, because all those skills have gone now. But we'll put you in a flat And then what?
Right. So last time you were on the show, we spoke about politicians who are, running the country, who we know, this country, United Kingdom, who we know have said that they took, in their student years, cocaine.
Yeah.
We know that. It was said,
Yeah.
as part of the Tory government running for power, they said they took cocaine, some of them. Obviously, most have said we've taken cannabis or whatever. And I'll come to you on cannabis soon because we're talking about legalisation. It's coming round. So these guys who have taken cocaine, using your analysis, are you then saying that these people are still addicts?
Yeah. Because they've still got a taste for it. Just because you don't do it doesn't mean you don't want it.
And of course, we don't know they don't take it, or they do take it. We don't know, do we? We can only take people's words.
You don't take it.
We can take people's words.
Just you took it last week, but just because you don't take it today or next week doesn't mean you're not addicted to it. Any substance that you return to after that first time, you have got a taste for.
Right.
And that mindset will overcome. It will just overcome you, and then you go into addiction. So the time periods before. So you go down that road, there'll be two people go down that road. One will use and both will use. One will say, well, that is not for me. No. And never go near it again. But the other person...
And that would be, in your mind, that would be a person cured.
Yeah.
You would say they would never use it, so that's it.
Then, some people, they will use it. Nope, not for me, not my bag. And they will trot off. And then the other one will get a taste for it, enjoyed that minute, but probably won't use again for 2 or 3 weeks, but then use again.
Right, so in your hundreds, high hundreds, you would be classing those people
as addicted?
As addicted.
Yes.
So in your high hundreds. So the picture is a little less alarming. Don't get me wrong, it's still alarming, but it's a little less alarming because this high hundreds are not all behind bins.
No.
The people who you might think are doing a nice job. As you said, you mentioned something about a surgeon or a police officer or a fireman or whatever. You put a whole lot of different roles. So these people are carrying out these roles, but are still taking infrequently, maybe.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Their life doesn't revolve around it. It can slip into that really quickly, but there's a lot of people that will just... use it as and when and be quite happy with that process. It is something that they look forward to, like some people look forward to going on holiday or whatever. They will look forward to it.
And do you see that as a drug worker as acceptable, or do you see that as a drug worker as always an individual teetering on the edge?
It's not my judgment to make.
Oh, you don't make the judgment?
No.
You're just making the assessment saying, this person are still taking, as far as I'm concerned, they're addicted.
I'm not there to judge them.
They're addicted, right.
I'm not there to judge them. I'm not there to be critical of their lifestyle, how they do it, how they want to do it. What I'm there for is an information platform for them so that I can impart some of what I know to them and vice versa. That's how we learn as a drugs worker. That's how we hone our skills, listen to different sorts of addicts, listen to people with different addictions. That's how we learn. So I'm not there to judge. I'm the middleman.
Gotcha. So when you're giving me this assessment of how good the present system is, and you can only see 10 who've actually been there and then said, I'll never touch again, you're saying basically that but there are many who potentially are living normal lives other than now and then are jumping in and out of the game.
Yeah.
Right,
yeah.
Okay. Could you hazard, I don't want to push you, could you hazard a guess as to the percentage of those high hundreds who are doing that life? As to the ones who are totally...
About a quarter, I'd say.
About a quarter?
Yeah. Yeah, about a quarter.
Right, so they would come to about a quarter now then. So you're saying the 3/4 are fully involved in the game?
Yeah. They are bang at it. It's a common term.
Bang at it.
Unfortunately, that is a common phrase you'll hear. They're bang at it. They are. Yeah, and it's sad. The homeless situation has got a lot worse in England.
Right.
And they need something to cope.
So now we come to the important part. What would you do that government isn't doing to solve the problem?
I think I said in the last education, good education, not just a few slides or a film. It needs to be ex-addicts or people with addiction. They're not scary, they're there, they're still human beings, but they've got so much information and knowledge to impact. And, you know, it's hard for kids, especially, you know, teenagers, if they're standing looking at their teacher, giving them a talk about drug prevention and how not to take drugs. It's their teacher. They can't make the connection. So they need someone that they can connect with.
Okay.
So when an ex-addict or an addict comes in with a drugs worker, and they can ask, you know, they can ask questions, and the addicts are, one thing I have to say about addicts, when it comes to their addiction, they're very truthful.
Right, okay, interesting.
They will tell you gore and all, you know, they're very truthful about it. So that's what the kids need to hear. They need to hear it, warts and all, not just a teacher standing there going out what they got. I don't even know, social studies when I was at school, I don't even know it's called now. But they need to understand how it starts, how it goes on, and how it's possibly going to finish. Mm-hmm. The impact as well. They need to understand the impact it will have on their families.
And this was the original question.
Yeah. So then, but that kid might have an addict in the family, and because the family are not talking about it and being open about it and being quite closeted, this kid doesn't understand why their sibling's been banished. They don't understand the dynamics of it. They don't understand. So if you can cover those bases, so they get it. They can ask questions. They can ask the questions that they feel they need to be asked. So they have an informed decision. So when they go out, you know, they get it. And the other thing as well, kids will love mystery. You know, anything that they think is a bit naughty, a bit mysterious, that they think their parents don't know about. They fall into that gap. They fall into that gap really easily because they think, you know, it makes them peer pressure, all that stuff going on. But if people don't know, they will just trundle into the darkness and not realise.
So this has brought me to two areas now that I think three areas indeed, that we need to explore. One of my sisters is a drug, alcohol, cigarette, drug abuse person whose her role was after university is to look at these addictions. So my question to you is this, and I've asked her about this before, is putting all of these addictions together helpful or not helpful?
Not helpful.
That's my kind of feel on it. I'm not saying that being addicted to alcohol isn't a problem.
No, but it's a completely different thing. Because alcohol's legal for one.
Right.
You're not breaking the law.
Right. That's the problem. And cigarettes, you know, they're killing you, don't get me wrong. I'm not arguing they're not killing you, probably killing you more than any of the others put together. But if they're still legal,
yes,
it's a different way of obtaining it. Mm-hmm. Right. So the first thing we could say, if there was any government minister listening or whatever, we could say splitting those up, because they put them together now.
Even splitting up stimulants and depressants.
You would split that?
Oh, definitely, because it's two different things.
But you know they're all connected now. You know they're all put together now.
Connected.
Under the system, they're all put together.
But that saves money. That's not about being proactive towards the addict. That's, I mean, you know, where I was working, that I left, you didn't even, you know, you didn't even get a desk to sit at, to work at.
Right, okay.
You know,
because it's so badly funded, is what you're saying.
Yeah, you were hot desking everywhere. You know, as a drugs worker, when you're working in absolutely chaotic environments, you know, these people are bouncing off walls. You need to have one part of your working environment that's structured, and for a lot of drugs workers, that's their desk. So they can sit at their desk in front of their computer and just take a breath, do what they need to do, but that's their space. Even though all this chaos is going on around them, that's their space. But they're saying you can hot desk, and we're not going to have a place anymore for drug addicts to come. You're just going to find them on the street.
But the problem is, I think, because I know what seems to work, that you know, in my sister's domain, they seem to work for councils. Okay, local government, if you elsewhere in the world, in the United States or wherever. Whereas maybe it would be better working out with that nationally, because they don't actually make the funds. So in the United Kingdom, they're not state taxes or anything like that. So they're not making the funds, they're being given funds. And so it probably is easier to say alcohol, drugs, and I think they're trying to throw gambling on it now as well.
Yeah, I mean, it's all about, in essence, NSH England.
Yeah.
Because they're all classed as medical issues.
Right, well,
So
she was doing hers from the council.
Yeah, the council are funded by NHS England.
Right, got you.
But the council has to...
Which is a National Health Service,
Yeah.
not in England.
So the council are funded to supply buildings and stuff, housing, homes, and then support workers. But predominantly drugs workers are funded through NHS
Right.
England. But even that now is going to tender. It used to be community drugs teams, and it's not anymore.
Well, she's a social worker.
It goes to tender.
Yeah.
So you're not working. I've never worked for the local authority council. I've always worked for some form of NHS England.
Gotcha. So you were specifically on drugs rather than anything else. Well, so in your area that was actually quite good, you would suggest, because she's basically a social worker and working them all.
Yeah. No, I don't think it is good. It can't be, because we've still got record amounts of drug addicts. It hasn't decreased.
What I'm trying to get to is it better to have a more targeted service
Yeah, definitely.
than a service which basically says these are them all, and when I go out to schools I'm going to say don't do your cigarettes, don't do your alcohol, and don't do your drugs, because that's basically what they're saying.
It's like mixed hostels never worked. Mixed hostels never work.
But it works financially because it's cheaper.
Yeah, but mixed is like, you mix a hostel, forget it.
Right.
It's not going to be one or them. You can't have them together. It just doesn't work, because if somebody could go in there, could be sitting in there, and they're just gone in because they smoke, and they're sitting next to the person that's smoking, drinking, and using.
Yeah, of course, because they could do all of them. Yeah, absolutely.
So you've got one end of the dynamic, and you've got the complete other end. So this person, who's going to take more of the worker's time?
Yeah, I would say the easier one, and the one where you might appear to have more success.
And they're going to be more, So because they'll tick the box quicker than this one on the right hand side that's bouncing off the walls, because the ones on the left hand side is going to happen a lot quicker. The other ones just get left to the wayside, because they're harder to work with.
Yeah, I can see that.
They're harder to work with, and they're not easy to work with. And a lot of people don't want to.
Don't want to work with them. Yeah,
no,
that's
they
the
just
other side.
don't want to.
Yeah, absolutely.
So clumping everything together is not going to work,
good.
even on a professional side.
So now we come to and I said to you there's 3 elements to it. So we hit that, and I wanted to hit that because I know that's the way that in times of lack of money that councils, social workers are dealing with this issue as, in the round. And as I said, I think they're even knocking gambling together with some other aspects of it. Don't get me wrong, and all these have problems.
But there can't be. You cannot compare somebody with a gambling addiction to a heroin addiction. The addictive part of it is the same, but you've got a person that is healthy, basically gambling, but then you've got another person that's probably covered in abscesses, physically. It just doesn't work, because they're two different dynamics, and they're two different ways to do things. So somebody that's got a gambling addiction, their ethos and what they feel is important and what their addiction about is completely different to somebody with a drugs addiction.
Absolutely. I mean, so now we come, let's say we have split drugs off. Now we come to the bigger problem, I think, of what drugs are we talking about? So I know now that there's a big move in the United States, and many states have already done it, particularly the Western states that were always a little bit more freer in life. And by the way, where that LSD sort of kicked off down in California and all those areas where they were doing it. So we come now to the western states of the US. A lot of them have already gone down the route and have said, and in fact have said in state literature, we are now making cannabis and all its derivatives basically legal. And they've always started running it, and there's big money in it, and the states are making money of it because obviously they're charging the companies that do it. And it's oftentimes Big Pharma because they've jumped in seeing the money. They're doing it illegal. The federal government still have it as illegal. And I know this thing's moving eastwards, and more and more eastern states are beginning to pick it up now. I'm not necessarily against that in any way, shape or means, because I've never really necessarily felt that smoking cannabis leads to you taking heroin. Obviously, I'd like to answer to that.
I personally, there are people that think it's a gateway drug. I personally don't think it is. Again, it goes back to education.
Yep.
And it's knowing the difference. I mean, cannabis, when I was at school, was a resin
Yep.
that you bought. And that you heat it up, you crumbled up, and you put it into tobacco.
Yep.
You're going into skunk now, which is an artificially grown plant. So you're not just smoking the plant, you're smoking all the chemicals that they put in the plant that enhances growth from seedling to tree in 12 weeks.
Yeah.
So if you've got any mental health issues, you're basically taking enhancement chemicals. So you're basically feeding your brain with steroids.
Yeah.
And then you're going to go bouncing off everywhere. So it's again teaching kids the difference, what the different drugs are, what is it when a cannabis factory. I don't know if you've been in a cannabis factory.
I've seen one too.
Yeah, but when you go in, it's very metallic. You know, you sort of very metallic tasting, and it's all the chemicals. So, but you might have some growers that have, you know, value what they do and have to take pride in what they do, and they do flush the plants, but a lot of times they don't.
Well, this is if you'd have asked me 20 time flies, might even be nigh on 30 years ago, whether all drugs should be legal, I probably would have said to you yes, because I saw the basis of most drugs being natural. And that's even, I was in Colombia, and you can see the coca plant, and these guys are just eating the coca as it is. I've been into, obviously, where they, I've been with the such block where they're blowing these places up, the coca in thingy. So, you know, I've seen that, but it was natural. I've seen it in Afghanistan with the poppy, and it was natural, right? So now I'm seeing or understanding, not my game, narcotics other than narco-terrorism areas, I'll say that again. Now I'm seeing how most of this is now in some way, shape or means not natural.
No, it's far from it.
So had they have legalised a lot of this stuff 30 years ago, you know, if you want to take the old Jamaican who's taking his ganja, totally natural, you'd have had natural stuff.
Yeah.
Now, of course, because the money is in it, they're using non-natural things to make what previously was natural, right?
It's like a biological lesson in there.
Right.
When you go in, it's just, you know, you need to have some real good form of science knowledge. Because they're all hydroponics. So they're all being hydroponically grown. And the chemicals that go in to enhance the growth and make them grow really rapidly, that's really what you're taking. When you put that into percentage to plant, it's probably 20 to 80%.
So if you now make cannabis legal, do you basically aid and assist that process, or will the, for want of a better word, and I want to come on to deals, which is the third part, will the illegal dealers, to use a better word, the illegal makers, the illegal controllers, will they be pushed out of the game by the massive pharma? And therefore you could still get natural cannabis, marijuana, natural stuff.
I mean,
could you?
I mean, the thing is, cannabis really, when you're thinking about it, it is legal in the UK for medical purposes.
Of course, hemp, but no, that's right.
But they haven't got any prescribers. It's
Right, explain that to me,
It's a really
please.
weird one because they've now said that cannabis oil for children and children that fit and Parkinson's
Yeah.
and things like that you can get cannabis prescribed because there was the big thing about people going
Exactly,
abroad
going to Canada
and
to
bringing
get
it
it,
back,
exactly, which
bringing
is
the
Canada
oils
one of
back
the
and
places
stuff,
that follow
yeah.
the US. Yeah.
So they they can't get any prescribers to prescribe it. They have
So
to
why
be
will they not prescribe it? The
because they have
doctors?
to be specially trained.
Right. Okay.
So, and it's the whole thing again about do they want to get involved in that because cannabis throws up this image.
Still got a bad name.
Yeah, they don't want to get. Some of them don't want to get involved in that. So it's sad really because there's a lot of children out there that could be helped. It's been proven. It's not. This is not just somebody sitting in the corner telling you it's good for you. It's scientifically proven that it's for epileptic children at certain levels of epilepsy.
Absolutely. But what about Joe Soap who's using it? Generally, it's not people. The average person is Joe Soap.
Yeah,
who's not got any
it.
problem.
That's it. But
Would you have that legal for Joe Soap?
yeah, I would because I just think when you think about someone that smokes cannabis, and then if you've ever been to an A&E on a Friday or Saturday night, which we all have through our lifetime, if you've especially got kids, has happened. Have you seen one person that's in the corner stoned out their face?
I know what you're going to say.
Do you see
Loads of drunks caught
30 or 40 drunks
yeah.
being sick everywhere, being abusive to the staff,
And
being
fighting everybody and all this,
absolutely driving you into insanity because they won't shut up and they're screaming and shouting and they stink of alcohol. So who would, when you walked out in that waiting room, you see the guy sitting there, he looks a bit glassy-eyed and he can't quite sit up straight, but he's just sitting there. He's not causing any hassle to anybody.
You could put the same argument for heroin, couldn't you? The heroin guy puts his needle in himself, sits in the side of the thing, does nothing to you.
Cannabis isn't addictive.
It's not, right.
You might it's not physically addictive.
What you're saying is a mental addiction.
Heroin is a physical addiction. Cannabis is a mental addiction. It's a hard one because I just think, so if you're asking me a question, would I prefer the person that's stoned or drunk? I'm going to go with the person that's stoned because it's just easier, isn't it? And they're less of a drain on the NHS system. I mean, the worst thing that I think didn't happen was they didn't bring the drunk tanks in. They should have done it.
Yeah, I agree with you. I agree with you on the last programme, and you're absolutely right.
They should have done it.
Yeah. And they also should have brought in shooting gallows, which we spoke about in the last programme.
That's it.
All of that.
It's going to happen. Things are going to happen. We are never going to be in a drug-free world. But it's how we deal with the situation
Well,
we're in.
we haven't even touched on legal pharmaceuticals, which in America are killing more than anybody else, as you know.
Oh,
Right?
OxyContin.
I mean, they are killing people, stone cold killing people left, right, and centre, and advertising.
Well, they're not.
to
The
kill
Americans as well are not used to heroin. This is relatively new to them. They've always been a stimulant country. It's always been crack, cocaine, methamphetamine.
Well, that's interesting because the musicians, and particularly in the black community, in the 50s, 60s, 70s, a lot of heroin was going around.
But it's not as prevalent.
No, I admit it's not as prevalent.
It's not as prevalent as it is in England.
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah,
in
no, I
England,
can see
meth
that.
never really took off because people were scared.
Because the white community used methamphetamine. Yeah, that's what they were using.
scared of it.
Yeah,
It
they were
never
using
really
that.
took off.
Yeah.
It's only in the past 10 years or so that heroin has become prevalent due to the OxyContin and fentanyl and stuff like that, which are now they know are highly addictive substances, and now heroin is becoming more prevalent, and that's
Which
why
basically is Oxy, isn't it?
yeah. So they're just basically in America they're freaking out because they just can't handle it because they're just dropping.
Well, because they legalised it. Well, no, not
was
because
legalised-
not
it was
wrong. Not because they
legalised
legalised it. Not because legalised it. They have pharmaceutical companies that basically were over-prescribing massively to hook people on these narcotics.
Well, there's actually a documentary on it at the minute. I'm sure it's on Netflix. Dopehead.
Right,
Sure, it's
okay.
called Dopehead, and
Not
it's
seen
about-
it, but probably very good.
It's about OxyContin and it's about how it was developed.
Yeah.
And what they put into selling it. They employed actual
For massive amounts of people.
massive
Yeah, yeah,
amount.
yeah.
They put in massive amounts of money to get people out there selling. and they were making tablets. It started off as, I think, a 5 and a 10, then it went up to 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, and it went up to 100. Then they had these pain management clinics that people would go to
just giving
and buy the script.
Writing scripts, absolutely. Yeah.
So they're now in a heroin epidemic because heroin's never been that prevalent.
What I understood from that, speaking to some people who were there, is that they had all of these, I think they call them pain management things.
Yeah.
Where what they did is you could turn up from out of state, anywhere, be long lines of people, and you'd have some doctor sat there and you'd be writing scripts
Literally,
8 hours a day. Boom, 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 knocking them out.
But the thing is, in America as well, they can doctor hop.
Yeah, they'll make it. Yeah, we're doing different steps.
Because in England,
absolutely.
once one doctor writes a prescription, no other doctor can write a prescription for that person.
They were going out of state to do it as well. They were going
so it doesn't matter where you, because the NHS is all linked together.
Correct.
In England, you can't doctor hop from doctor to doctor. You can't do it. Yeah. But in America, they can bounce from one to another, so they could have 10 or 12 doctors.
But the problem is, they were advertising it. You see, the TV advertised this all day long. So folk were going in and they were getting the highest prescriptions they were sending them. When they then clamped down on it, because they saw it happening, then these people turned to heroin.
Yes.
Because it's the same thing.
Yeah.
So they then thought, I've got to keep running with this because I'm now addicted.
And now fentanyl's the biggie over there.
So, correct. So they all jumped into that. And so we come back to the question, because I think it's a very, very important question, in terms of legalising cannabis. How do we control the fact that it doesn't end up with the legalised cannabis being legalised skunk example?
I think that's again where the government would have to, it would have to go out to tender, as it does as most contracts do in England. So it'd have to go out to tender, and they'd have to supply, the farms, and they'd have to be really monitored and regulated. It's like any pharmaceutical, it'd have to be regulated.
So you think in the UK we because we don't advertise so much like that in the States, you think we'd be able to control that better?
Yes, I think we'd be able to control, because we link together, we talk to each other, whereas in America they don't. They don't talk to each other as unities. They tend to be very individualised. But in England, they're not. They talk. So if it was done through the NHS, or it's done through a subsidiary of the NHS, it then can be monitored. So somebody can't sign on one place and then go up to another place to buy.
But if you legalise it fully, you could just go and buy it anyway.
Yeah, but I think you'd have to do the medical card thing. You'd have to be registered as you do in America. I mean, you have to register to play in a casino. You have to register 24 hours before.
But you don't need to register if you go to Holland and you buy whatever. Do you?
Yeah, but again, it's a different country.
But what I'm saying is, if you did it like in Holland, where you could only sell X amount.
Yes, so it'd be regulated. I think you have to show ID. You couldn't just walk in there. There'd have to be some regulation to it. But I think it's there. It is what
you're saying. It's a
there anyway, and you can either go with it or try and fight a losing battle.
Fight everything. It's a
losing battle.
It's an absolute. The battle's never anywhere near one.
It is. Yeah. So you can either look at it and say, you know what, we might as well just jump on this bandwagon now, straighten it out, stop these cannabis factories and everything that's going on with them, and do it properly.
And in your experience, because this is quite interesting, in your experience, if cannabis was legal, do you think it would stop a lot of kids making the jump to heroin, because they wouldn't be going to a dealer who had a vested interest in hooking you on something where you're going to come back? Do you think, or is that not the case?
I'd like to think so, but I think if someone's going to make the jump from cannabis to heroin, it's going to happen.
Anyway.
It doesn't matter. But I would hope that if we legalise cannabis, there'd be a lot then more proactivity in helping people not move on to any Class A's.
Right, okay.
Because if they're engaging with you, that's another opportunity for education.
And maybe the high is sufficient in the cannabis, that you don't need to jump anywhere else.
That's it. So that, if it's legalised, so hopefully then that's another engagement. So instead of the drug dealer telling them how lovely it is, the cannabis worker or whatever is saying, look, no, it's not great. It's not what it's cracked up to be.
So now this is the other area because you won't believe it, but we've been running at least 58 minutes now. You won't believe that, I know, because that's how quickly it runs, because the subject's fantastic and you're a very good proponent of putting it forward. What I would like to say before we do break, and it's looking like we're going to have you another time in another era, another season, would be, you spoke about the dealer last time, and you basically told the story of a dealer who was basically turning his sister out and dealing his sister because he needed his bit as well. So what you get is the user dealer.
Yeah.
One of the questions that I kind of had was, and that I can't remember who asked me the question, was what you think of dealers. And I thought that was like too long, like a piece of string. I mean, you probably got dealers who are okay guys, and you probably got dealers who are dogs. Yeah. So in your experience though, and well, first of all, have you come up against a lot of dealers?
Yes.
Yes. Right. So in your experience of dealers, how do you find the average dealer? I can only go on average.
Well, you go into categories of dealers, don't you? Because you've got the lower street dealers that are just that are just probably addicted themselves, and they just do this to feed their own habit. And then you've got I mean, I'm sure everyone's heard of or seen something about the country lines. Yeah. So you've got that. So it's the pecking order of dealers. So the dealer to me is the top of the supply chain. That's the dealer. Right,
well, you'll never see that guy because that's the guy coming out of Colombia or coming out of wherever.
And that's
Peru.
the dealer.
You're never going to see that.
But they're the people we need to concentrate on. We need to go to the ones that are higher up the pecking order. Because that disrupts the chain. Because the people that are on the street dealers that have just been arrested, chucked into prison for 8 weeks, and they come out again, someone else is standing in their spot. You know, there's never going to be an empty spot long. Again, there's some absolute scum of the earth that are vile, absolutely vile. And then, like I say, there's
now when you're saying these scum of the earth types, are these scum of the earth types who take drugs themselves, or these are scum of the earth types who are just utilising it as a monetary process?
It's just money. It's easy money.
Oh, okay.
And they will trample over. I mean, a lot of the gang culture we've got now, and this postcode wars and stuff like that, it boils down to street dealing. Mm-hmm. You know, that's what. It's easy money. You know, everyone's probably seen the TikTok.
Is it easy money? Or is it easy money, or is it money that you can get easily? Two different things. But what I'm meaning by that is there's a price to be paid.
Well, not to them. They don't.
Well, in the gang, there's a price to be paid.
Yeah, but they don't see that because they're a gang of brothers. They're brothers in arms and all this rubbish. Mm. And I'm not gonna. Mm. You know, you've got 13, 14-year-old kids sitting in police cells. I'm not grassing anyone up.
Exactly. So they're starting at 9, 10, 11, 12.
They don't realise they're only using them because they can't be prosecuted.
But they're the fellas who take the next place later on.
Yeah, but they'll probably be banged up though, because they're the one. They're just the Joeys.
But later on, some of those fellas are going to take the high place.
They're not dead.
Well, yeah, dead or done over. Yeah, so or in prison. But what I'm saying is, when they come into it. In your experience, when they come into it, do they come into it all knowing, or do they come into it and then realise how the game's played and they can't get out? Or they just get used to the money, which is the other side of the coin.
The money. Personally, I think it's the money. To them, it's easy money, and they like the kudos of it.
And that's the other side of it, the kudos of it.
Yeah, it's the kudos of it, and they like the money, and they think that, you know, it makes them look good, it makes them untouchable, and you go through all those processes, and you know, it's.
So from the ones you know in your experience, and I know you said to hit at the top, and that's why I have had experience at the top, and I would say to you, in most of the places where you're saying hit at the top, unless you get somebody who's really crazy, like your Escobar type fella, who's only really gone crazy because they didn't respect him.
Yeah, I mean,
right? You ain't going to catch him. You're not going to catch him.
It can't be just the street dealers. It can't be just the people.
It can't be.
But that's what they concentrate on.
Well, because, obviously, the regular police example are not going to catch a fella. I'm not going to catch a fella at the top.
Gets, to the government, that just gets the numbers up. So
they're not going to catch
how many drug dealers that we caught. And they just throw them into jail, and then nothing gets done. Their addiction's not dealt with, and then they just
totally agree with you.
It's just I think it needs to be. We'll say the pecking order's 10. They need to be looking at number 5 and number 4.
The problem is 5 maybe, but definitely number 10 or down, if whatever you want to use your scale. That guy has probably corrupted the system. So you're not going anywhere near him, as a general rule, unless he goes crazy. And when he's gone crazy, like Pablo, and when I say crazy, he's killing 1,000 people. He's not just 1 or 2. He's killing
them anyway.
He's killing 1,000. Yeah, but he's killing them.
But he was killing them anyway.
Absolutely, he's drugging them or whatever. But he's killing them by blowing them up, chopping their heads off, doing whatever. So this is real killing of people, and he's killing people who matter. So he's killing presidential candidates. This is why it comes to my game, because he's killing presidential candidates. He's killing police like they're out of fashion. He's killing judges. He's killing So this is the level you get when you're at the top level. So for most of those people, those politicians who do not want to die, most of those police, senior police, I'm not just talking Joe Soap, he will send his people into your police station, and he says to the top man in the station, so like people turn around saying, Colombian police corrupt, but he will send the top guy in those days, and he'll say, choice, lead or the gold, up to you, my friend. Right? And he's serious. And when he's saying he don't mean just you dying, he means all your family's dying. So for most people, they say, I'll have a piece of that gold that silver you've got running. Yeah, but that's when it's out of control.
But what I'll say to you then is, so what are we going to do?
Well, the war started. The argument was probably don't start the war in the first place. But the war started, and the war is there. And the war is there.
Yeah, the drugs are always going to be there. Right. While there's war, there's guns, there's drugs, there's money.
Absolutely. And
so the drugs are, but it's what we do for our children to educate them not to do that.
Exactly. And
because you can't stop it. We will never stop drugs.
If your whole system is making it look sexy, is making it look, as a thing that the bad boys do, making it look, you hear them say, the soldiers.
Yeah.
Right? You're giving it all this, your women, they're buying women with thousands of pounds dripping off them. They're in cars and they say, I like that. Yeah, great. This guy's looking great. If that's the way it's functioning, it's a hell of a battle to fight.
It is a hell of a battle. But again, I think that drugs education should start at a younger age.
Yeah.
And at the end of the day, if they choose to go down that path, they're going to choose it. It doesn't matter what we do. It doesn't. It just doesn't. Because if they think that what morality level are they that they think that's good? So how do you stop that?
That's a societal problem.
Exactly. But that societal problem then has the knock-on effect that person that's in misery will go on to create other people's lives miserable, and the misery just continues.
I think what's happened is in the society, and this is why I think it caught on in America, well, albeit that the killings, there's a lot in America, don't get me wrong, but you're going to see the killings in the states around it to try and feed into America. So that's killing started off first in Colombia, say example. Yeah. Now you see it in Peru, now you see it in Mexico en masse, because that's where the last bit's coming into the United States. Then you see it up in Canada, because they're bringing stuff across. Now you see it in, let's find another avenue to get into Europe. So you now see them doing stuff in Nigeria. You see them doing it in the Caribbean. You see, because of the movement of where's the next place that we can move to push the narcotic. right, from, and the money's big enough, and whom can we corrupt? Well, you can corrupt a Caribbean island in a day, because, we're talking billions of dollars.
Yeah.
Right? So you can say, Prime Minister of a country that's got 250,000 people in it, Prime Minister, we want to take your area. Right, so this is where the problem lies. Or we can run it through banks in the British Virgin Islands, or in the British Cayman Islands, or in Gibraltar, or wherever that are offshore islands, and you're running the money through there, and the money's not being dealt with. The money's running into the coffers in the City of London. So what I'm saying is, when you're trying to hit the top people, it's sorted.
So that's what I'm saying to you. It's never going to be fixed.
Yeah.
Because we can't fix it. All we can do is give our children the best education so they can make an informed decision.
Yeah.
If they do take the wrong decision, we can help them find out why. Because that's the key.
Okay.
It's finding out why. It's making that definition between do they like it or are they doing it for a reason. And if they're doing it for a reason, what is the reason?
Yeah. And
what can we do to help them through that? Sticking them on a script does not help them do that.
So we come back to the original question that the listener asked. How can I deal with my family member, friend, whomever, who is addicted? We come back to the original. And if we have such low success rates, then this is why I now become a little bit despondent, because the success rates are so low.
But again, it's never given into the disease. That's a Dr. Phil quote, by the way. I can't take ownership for that.
Very good.
You never give in to the disease, but you don't get sucked in by it either, because that disease will make you ill. And it does. I've seen families crippled, fractured, you name it. I've seen them, and I've seen what it can do, because you can't fix it. You're too emotionally involved. You just are. So you need someone that's going to be, for example, Switzerland. They're just going to be the middleman, and they are going to help with that part of that addiction. But there just isn't enough time. There isn't enough workers. There isn't enough time. There isn't enough facilities. There isn't enough things. You're asking people to come from this entrenched, absolutely chaotic, nuts world and become, contributing members of society. They don't know how. But we still expect that of them. They don't know how to do it because they've come out of it. Because, like I said, when I said earlier, they say you freeze the day that you take the drug. So they literally age overnight. And if they've been addicted for 5 or 6 years, that 5 or 6 years is gone. You can't say to someone, right, we're going to give you this prescription now, it's methadone, it's another highly addictive drug, but you're going to become a contributing member of society. But we don't give them any help to do that. We don't give them any instructions, and we don't call them out when they don't. We're not truthful with people. And the workers just simply haven't got the time. And what's happening now is a lot of the drug agencies are relying on volunteers that were in that life. So they, on their journey of recovery, and they're putting them into some absolutely chaotic situations, and then are surprised when they relapse.
Right, but you like using those people to tell the truth to others.
Yeah.
But you don't like them as the worker. Is that what you're basically saying?
You can't, because they're just. No. They can be, but these people are probably just a year or two into their recovery.
Right. Okay.
And they feel so good about themselves, and they feel so empowered. They want to help other people, but. You put a recovering addict that's still quite raw still and not dealing with their emotions and what they need to do into a room with people, and half of them they've used with. There's a lot of triggers going to be going off in that room.
So, I mean, to bring us to the end, because we have to, not because we want to, we've come full circle. And the reason why I wanted to have you back on again is because the last 3 episodes trilogy was about the money in different guises. I had one guy on from the city, one guy on from the the data usage, crypto, NFTs, and a third chap, just this week's actually, so you'll come soon. This week's guy was looking at, if you will, the fourth shot, the future way forward. My fear is, talking with these guys and seeing what I could see from my own understanding of the way things are going, is that money is everything, as it always has been. Let's not hide that. But I think we're going into an area now where technology adds to the money and people will be out of work.
Yeah.
Right? And from what I'm seeing is that what you're talking about will lead to more and more people going down the drug road.
Yes.
Because idle hands and all that sort of thing. And they'll have nothing to do. So it's very easy when the technology allows you to just type up on your computer, I want 3 bags sent to whatever.
Oh, dial drugs, right? Amazing.
Yeah. And they're on top of that because they know how the system's going to work, so it's easy. So now you're going to get more people embroiled in this rather than less people embroiled in it, I believe.
Yeah.
Because you're going to make it easier to contact the people you want to speak to. And it won't be so seedy because you won't have to walk down the road and think, basically equivalent to what's happened with pornography, right? You don't need to go to the little porno shop.
No.
You just get it on the computer. That's what they're doing with drugs, and they're making it easy, right? So the question is, to you, if we don't do something now, I fear we are going down a deeper road, not a lesser road, a deeper road. One of the things I think we can do, as I said, I kind of do believe in it, is even though we've changed cannabis around, that we legalise that. Because I think some people who just want to get, for want of a better word, high without taking drink, can probably utilise that, and maybe that will be sufficient. Maybe that will be sufficient. I can't say it will be, but maybe.
No, because not every case is going to be. I mean, but it could be that somebody just wants to be able to sit in a chair and relax. They don't like drinking. It's not their thing. And they just want to sit there and just relax and just not have to think. Just let their brain rest. I know there's going to be now, everyone's going to jump around saying, but this is what it does to Yes, we can all go into that. But it's not everybody. I'm just talking about if that's what the person chooses.
Yeah. So the person who likes drugs, maybe that's the person who likes it will just be sufficiently happy,
they're quite happy
with your cannabis.
With that. Ideally, we wouldn't be having these conversations because we wouldn't have drugs in the world, but we have.
Correct.
We've got pharmaceutical and we've got illegal. Will it be ever disappear? No. Too much money in it. Will it ever get better? No, I honestly don't think.
You think this is the state we are? We are.
Because we're still in the same. I went back to England in November and I was talking to lads that I'd been working with 10, 15 years ago.
And they're still in the game.
And they're still in the same situation, still entrenched in it. And you say to them, I actually said to them, who are you working with? I'm on the waiting list. Well, how long have you been waiting? You've been on it a year. So, will it change? No. Until they put the resources back into it, they will never change. At the end of the day, we have drug addicts. They're there. They're not going away because the drugs aren't going away.
And even if you do more enforcement, you're not going to get rid of the drugs.
I know that sounds really doom and gloom, but unfortunately it's the reality. All we can do is give our kids the best information that we can. And if you have got a family member that with addiction, get informed yourself. Go to NA meetings, go to Al-Anon, speak to people that are in the same situation as you, because you do feel very isolated. You do. It's very shameful. People are ashamed, and they don't want to admit that. But they get to the stage where they have to. But when you sit in a room, it's, sharing's caring, and it really is, because when you hear you're not the only one, and actually you were a good parent, it was just that your kids took the wrong road. And no matter how many times you tried to block that road, someone's just going to run. And
to finish, you believe in tough love, you believe in saying no more from me.
Yes. Definitely.
Even though you know, or the parent thinks, that's going to mean the next thing they're going to do is out stealing or selling the body, depending on whom they are. That could be male or female, way more likely selling your body for female because it's probably easier. Stealing, maybe, whatever, robbery, whatever you're doing, burglary, whatever you're doing, you know it's going to lead that child down that route of yours. You're still going to say hold of that, which could end up in a prison sentence where they're still going to get the same stuff, if not more, within the prison service. You're still going to say tough love.
Yes, all the way. Because because you're not helping your child, you're helping yourself. It's to alleviate your own guilt. They don't care. They don't care about your guilt.
So if they're so far gone,
they don't care about your
if they're
feelings.
so far gone, well, when we're saying so far gone, can you? Sorry, we never got an answer to. If you can, very quickly, because we're struggling on time. If they're so far gone, but what period of time do you think it takes to be so far gone, or is there not one?
Oh, there's not one. It depends on the person.
Could be the first hit, could be the 50th.
Yeah.
Right, so, Jill, on that kind of sad note.
Depressing.
Yeah, I'm going to say it's worse than depression. It's a sad note.
It is sad.
On a sad note, that in your experience, the only way you can think about dealing with it as a parent or a grandparent or whatever it might be is to basically partially disown the person and seek assistance.
You are disowning the addiction, not the person.
Right.
So but they are a unit. The addiction and the person are as one until they become separated.
Okay.
So it's not that you don't love your kids, you just don't love what they're doing.
Right. And you let them know that.
Yeah, you're not a bad parent. It doesn't mean you love them any less. You just don't like what they're doing. You don't love what they're doing. So while they're doing it, they can't be in your world. Because they have to learn. Because if you keep bailing them out, they're going to keep going back.
But the fear of every parent's going to be death, isn't it?
Yeah, but that's still that, and sadly that does happen. But that is not the parent's fault. The kid is in the middle of their addiction. That it's their addiction. That's what you've got to remember in your head. It's their addiction, not yours.
So
their addiction doesn't become yours. You make it yours, and then when it becomes too tough for you to handle, and it's fracturing yourself and your family, and you want to back out, you're too far in. You're too far into it. And if sadly someone does die, that's by their hand. That's by their choice.
So the secret is, ladies and gentlemen, would be to, as Jill would say, educate your children before they even get to that position. Definitely.
Informed choices, definitely.
Jill, thank you very much once again. Great to have had you on. As we said, I'll use your word of depressing. Nevertheless, the thing is, prevention in terms of education may help or prevent your loved one from going there in the first place. But Jill seems to be saying if they do wish to go there ain't much you can do about it.
It's like if your kid wants to stick their finger in the hole in the wall, in the electric socket, no matter how many times you tell them, they're still going to do it.
And on that, I'll leave you. Thank you very much for listening. See you next week.
If you'd like to help Carlton keep producing the Black Spy podcast and receive episodes and information that's only available to Carlton's special Patreon agents, then you can donate as little as £3, €4 or $5 a month by signing up with Patreon. See the Black Spy podcast notes or Google Patreon Black Spy podcast and pledge your monthly amount. You can even win the opportunity to be a guest on the show. Thanks for listening, and don't forget to subscribe for free.
Here is a working class spy telling his stories, the secrets, the lives of spies. Feel free to message Carlton King on all socials and give this show 5 stars on Apple iTunes and subscribe so you never miss a single episode. For your ears only.
I was a member of Her Majesty's Secret Intelligence Service.